everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of the Maritime Witch. Today we will be discussing the art of divination and all of its different forms. Before we get started though, just like to put out there that if anybody has any questions, to email me at maritimewitch@gmail.com. And also if you have any content or ideas for topics that you would like to have covered, you can send those to me as well. So let's go into this episode. I think this one might actually be a little bit longer than previous episodes. There's a lot of forms of divination, and I find this subject very fascinating, so I'd like to cover as much of it as possible. So, get comfy, grab yourself a nice cup of whatever you want to drink, and settle in and let's discuss divination. So, not everyone who practices divination is a witch, and not all witches practice divination, although I think most of us do lend ourselves to some form of divination along the way. There's written evidence of divination that goes back to the early second millennium. It's in Babylonian texts as early as 1800 BC. So divination, also known as fortune-telling, soothsaying, divining, also known as seers, oracles, and sages. The definition is a traditional set of methods of consulting divinity to obtain prophecies about specific circumstance defined beforehand. Wow.
That's over my head.
Well, that's kind of over my head too. It's fortune-telling, basically. Chinese culture has given the broadest scope to divination. I have been fascinated by divination in many forms for as long as I can remember. Ow, I just smacked my hand on the table.
I'll save you. Where are you? Speak to me. Speak to me.
Well, I don't think I need stitches or anything, so let's continue on. Probably going to be a little bit all over the place with this discussion because there is so much to cover, and there's a lot actually of my childhood as I was doing research in this that has come to light. So there's a lot of fun stuff to talk about as well. Some of the most ancient forms of divination, one of the earliest was sand divination, and it was the interpretation of lines and figures traced in the sand. Not something I think you see a lot of today. Maybe I should pay more attention when we're going for walks on the beach to the little squiggly lines, and you never know. Tea leaf readings is when a person who is seeking answers would drink a cup of tea made with loose leaves. And when they got to the bottom of the cup, it was turned upside down onto the saucer, and the images of the leaves in the cup and on the saucer would be read by the diviner. Now you can use a plain white teacup and saucer, which some people do prefer, but you can also now purchase specific fortune-telling cups and saucers. I actually have one. I will post a picture of that for the visuals. The origins of tea leaf reading was in Asia and the Middle East and ancient Greece, and modern tea leaf reading actually began in the 17th century as tea was introduced to the Western world. The Victorian era, divination thrived. There was such a fascination with the occult. Certain eras do, I think, have a fascination as we go through different time periods. I know as a child of the 70s, divination and a fascination with the occult was huge. Scrying is another ancient method. You can scry with smoke, water, mirrors, crystal balls, and I have a scrying bowl that I can take a picture of and post. And what you would do is you would sit quietly in meditation and you would just kind of channel, and you would get images or thoughts that would come through. Grains of corn was another ancient method. So they would take grains of corn and scatter it, and again, look for interpretation in the patterns of the grain and if there was any pictures that were prevalent. And bone scrying, and I do believe that they used the bones of deceased animals. I do actually have a set of bones, but they're plastic. But stay tuned because there will be pictures. One of the most popular forms of divination is tarot cards. It was developed in the 15th century in Europe. It has Italian roots. There was no evidence that they were actually used for divination until the late 18th century, but it is a widely used practice, and today it only keeps gaining in popularity. And playing cards are also used as divination as well. I do actually know someone who doesn't use a traditional tarot deck for divination. They just use the regular deck of playing cards. Ancient runes and rune casting, used to contact the dead for protection, good luck, and safety. Now, because of certain TV shows that have gained in popularity, Viking runes have also gained in popularity. They're actually from the 2nd century AD. Just a word of advice, as I was researching the runes, I came across a little tidbit that I thought was kind of interesting. A lot of people are getting tattoos with the runes, the different symbols of the Viking runes. And just let you know that some runic symbols have also been co-opted by some groups promoting some stuff you may not want to have permanently engraved on your body. So just, if you're planning, if that's your thing and you're planning on getting a runic tattoo, just do your research as to what the symbol means. I mean, the symbols are Viking, they're Nordic, Scandinavian, and it's just unfortunate that some groups have taken some symbols. For example, as I was doing this research, the swastika, which we all associate with Nazi Germany, was actually an ancient symbol for the sun and unity and celebration. I do believe that is what we discovered, but nobody even knows that. And nobody would go and get a swastika tattooed on their skin based on the fact that, that was the original symbol. So, but anyways, just like I said, just a word of caution. And if you are getting any kind of tattoos with any kind of symbols, just to make sure that it's not being used by something that you are not willing to be associated with yourself. So moving along, oracle cards. There are a ton of oracle cards out there, and oracle cards, similar a little bit to tarot, they're read differently. Oftentimes I think you can do different spreads with oracle cards, but most commonly you'll see like a daily 1-card draw for just like a daily what's going to happen in your day or what you should be aware of, or a 3-card spread. Every Sunday I do a 3-card spread, and on my Facebook page, the Zenden Oracle, and people choose a card, and then I give them the meaning later on in the day. It reveals the situation that you are in or what you should be doing to improve your situation. And some speak of future events as well. The one thing that I do like about oracle cards is you can buy any oracle card deck that you want. If you like cats, there's an oracle deck. If you like trees, there's an oracle deck. Like, there are oracle decks for every imaginable thing that you would like to have. If you like horses, I'm sure there's a horse deck. Or if you like pigs, and I know this because I have a slight addiction to buying decks of tarot and oracle cards.
Just a little one.
Just tiny. Yeah, I don't think I need an intervention yet.
Do they have any for beer?
You know what? If they don't, I'm sure you could invent one, but you never know. There could be the beer oracle. There are some actual oracle decks out there that are quite funny and humorous, and they're just meant to be like a lot of fun. And if you're like me and you enjoy a certain 4-letter word, you can buy those ones as well.
What's the word? It's
fire truck, but you have to shorten it a little bit.
Fire.
yeah, that's it.
Oh, you said a bad word. I'm going to tell your mama on you.
And speaking of oracle decks, you can also buy oracle books, which I think are kind of fascinating. It's just like your regular book, but you hold the book with your intention and your focus and your question, and then you open the book to whatever page, and that's your answer. So I think those are kind of neat too. I do have a couple of those as well. So now let's dive into the world of Ouija boards, spirit boards. It was a trademark actually by Hasbro, introduced by Elijah Bond on July 1st, 1890. And it was actually just an innocent parlor game. And it wasn't used as a divining tool until World War I by Pearl Curran. Now, the Ouija board is a very controversial piece of divination. Religious groups have cautioned against its use, and even some practitioners who use spirit boards just caution inexperienced users against it. Again, as a child of the 70s, I had a Ouija board. I think pretty much everybody on my street had a Ouija board, and we used it like every kid in the 70s did. Want to know, did the little boy down the street love me, or did this girl hate me? And we didn't use it the way it was ever intended to be used. And I think now Fisher-Price actually has like a little pink version for little girls, which actually I find kind of terrifying. But hey, I mean, I used one when I was a kid, and I turned out okay. I'm on the fence with actually having Ouija boards in the house. Again, as a child of the 70s, I know it's going to sound very repetitive. The 70s was a huge era for the occult and the genre of horror movies, 70s, 80s, even early 90s. So I grew up watching a lot of horror movies. And actually, my mother was not a fan of horror, science fiction, fantasy, but my dad was. So I always got to go to the drive-in. Great parenting here, 10, 11 years old, going to all the horror movies with my dad at the drive-in. I mean, I loved it. It's a great memory. And then that just kind of carried on throughout my life as just something that I absolutely loved. I loved horror movies. Not so much now as I'm older, but I did see the movie Witchboard.
It began at a party. It was only a game.
When someone uses a Ouija alone, like Linda, she's very susceptible to the spirits she contacts. And the wrong spirit will take advantage of this. Pretty soon, all she wants to do is use the board.
It isn't a game anymore. Witchboard. Don't play it alone.
Hollywood did not portray the Witchboard in a good light, like most things to do with the occult and divination and witchcraft. And I always swore after I saw that movie that I would never have a spirit board in the house. Just for me, and I'm inexperienced with using them as well. I mean, when I was 12 years old, I thought I was the cat's meow with how to use a spirit board. But now I obviously know a little bit more. I've grown up, matured a little bit, just a little bit. And I remember being at Bluestone Magic in Mahone Bay, and Sean was waiting in the car.
Was I?
You were, because you never go in. And there was a spirit board there. So I remember texting you and I said, how would you feel about having a spirit board in the house? And you were like, you said you'd never have a spirit board in the house. But it was just, it wasn't your typical Ouija board. I will post a picture. And it was just absolutely beautiful. And I have actually since bought another spirit board just because of the design of it. And they were brought home and used primarily just as decoration. The planchettes have been tucked away in a drawer so that they're not ill-used. I'm not experienced, and I don't want anybody else coming into the house thinking that, oh, hey, it's cool, let's pretend we're 12 years old again. And, so just because I have learned so much more since I was 12.
So when you're at work, I can go on that spirit board and say, will Linda get mad at me if I don't do the dishes?
Well, I can tell you the answer to that right now.
I pretty well know.
You don't need a spirit board for that, but like I said, the planchettes are tucked away in a secret location so that nobody goes in and
I can't even say that. Planchette. That doesn't sound right.
It's okay.
Plan and then the next part.
Planchette.
Shet.
Oh, this just took a turn for the worse, didn't it?
You say a bad word, you better take it back. 'Cause good little girls don't talk like that.
All right, So let's move forward to astrology and horoscopes, the signs of the zodiac. This was actually developed in the third millennium. We're all assigned a sign on the wheel of the zodiac by our birth date. And astrology was actually considered an academic discipline in the 17th century. And it was widely popular in newspapers with your zodiac forecast. I remember, again, child of the 70s, you would read your horoscope in the paper. And I don't know if you remember or not, but it was in like the pharmacy. When you would go up to the cash to pay for your stuff, they had this little box and it had these tiny little scrolls in there for each star sign. And you would get I'm an Aries, you're a Libra. And I think it was like 79 cents or 80 cents, whatever, and we were fascinated. We couldn't wait for the next month to come out. And you also used to be able to buy, I don't know if you ever saw them or if you remember them. They were like little mini books that they used to have up by the shelf too. You could get like word search and like mini crossword books, but they used to have mini horoscope books as well.
Sort of remember that.
Yeah, I did find a picture of the scrolls, and I actually looked for a picture of these little mini books, and I wasn't able to find one. I mean, they were like very, very vintage. Sort of dating myself there. But it was a great time. There were some fun aspects of divination as well. And I was very interested in astrology, but it can become, a lot of these forms of divination can become very overwhelming. There's a lot to learn for a lot of them. So there's that sacrificing your time part again. Like if you want to learn divination, you have to be willing to learn. Another ancient way of divination was pendulums and boards, also known as dowsing. The use of pendulums and boards was actually at one point banned by the Catholic Church. A lot of forms of divination actually were at one point banned by the church. They saw it as a form of devil worship, and they completely forbade its use. Your pendulum acts like an antenna, picking up on energies emanating from people, places, and objects, much like a spirit board. And I remember too, when I was a kid, we would take, for lack of having a pendulum, I didn't have a pendulum. I have pendulums now, and I have a pendulum board. But when we were kids, if somebody was pregnant, I remember they would take a strand of their hair and they would put their wedding ring on their hair and they would hold it over the baby. Whichever way it would swing would determine the sex of the baby. So that was, kind of like a form of using a pendulum. Yeah, so I don't really know a whole lot about pendulums and boards. That's just something that I am just starting to learn about now. Palmistry, very ancient, reading the lines of the palm on the hand. The origins are uncertain, but it may have begun in ancient India and spread from there. Again, it's, I know you can buy, there's lots of books out there, and there are some quite fascinating TikTok videos of people doing palmistry and just showing like what the different lines are. Do you have this mark? Do you have this line? I've learned quite a lot just even through that. Numerology is another form from 6th century BC, developed by the Greek philosopher Pythagoras, who believed that numbers carried sacred codes and that the numbers were connected to life events and that everything in the world is dependent on numerical patterns. And I do believe that there are quite a few movies, TV shows, perhaps based on that. I haven't seen them because I always go to, does the dog die? And obviously the dog died, so I didn't watch the movie. So the I Ching. Now, this is something that I have known about, but haven't really researched a whole lot until just recently. It is an ancient Chinese divination text. It contains 64 hexagrams and is used for guidance in divination. The more modern method uses a series of coin tosses whereby the process is done 6 times. I've only touched the surface of this. It seems quite involved. I would actually like to learn more about it. I just don't really know a whole lot about it now. Dream interpretation is another one, symbolism of your dreams. Not so much for telling your future as much as it is detailing what your present situation is and how it is affecting you and what you may need to do to make changes if there are any to be made. There's a lot of symbolism in dreams. Seances. not so much a form of divination to tell the future, but, it's a group of people meeting with the intent to contact the dead through the aid of a medium.
I am Madame Leota, seer of all, voice to the spirits. Whom do you seek?
So something that is relatively new, or at least new to me, and I don't think it is widely popular yet, is charm casting. So what charm casting is again, it's symbolism. I have a basket of different charms and chakra stones, and I have a charm mat. And each charm, of course, has its own meaning, like you would with an oracle card or a tarot card. Each little charm is assigned a specific aspect of your life, and the person seeking answers comes in and they take a little cup of charms, or they reach in and grab some charms and they sprinkle them across the mat, and then the reader then interprets what those symbols mean for that person depending on where they are placed on the charm casting mat. I was quite fascinated by this one. It was just something that really kind of jumped out at me. Like I said, I've been fascinated with so many different forms of divination throughout my journey and my pathway since I was a kid. When you think back to being a kid and the different forms of divination that we're exposed to, and I know that a lot of people don't think of certain things but as divination, but blowing out your birthday candles and making a wish. So just looking back at my list of different things, fortune cookies tells the future. Again, with the daisies, he loves me not. We've all done that little form of divination, I'm sure. A huge thing in the 70s was mood rings. Again, not really telling your future, but it was kind of cool to have that ring to tell you what mood you were in. I mean, I always know what kind of mood I'm in.
Me too.
What else did we have growing up? Fortune fish. Do you remember the fortune fish?
Roughly.
I think I've got one somewhere, so I have no idea where it is. I'll have to see if I can find it. I mean, I'm sure I can find a picture of it on the internet anyways. It's
refresh my memory.
Well, it comes in a little red and white plastic pouch, and it's this red cellophane fish, and you put it on the palm of your hand and it curls or it lays flat. And
I remember those.
Yeah, and then it tells, and there's like a little code on the back as to how, depending on how much it curled or if it laid flat, like it would tell you about yourself.
We were stupid.
Well, no, I think it's kind of fun. And actually, it's funny because I actually I had one as a kid, but I recently, well, I guess not recently because COVID erased 3 years of everybody's life. I went to a Gothic fair in the city, and when you paid your admission to get in, they were giving everybody a fortune fish. So that's where I still have it. And I just thought that was kind of cool. It was like a little throwback to my childhood. It's like, oh my God, I haven't seen one of these since I was like 12. And, so I do still have it. It's tucked in a drawer somewhere.
So they basically use science to make money from us.
Yep. But it was fun. So, they didn't really take a lot of money from us. What else did we do as kids? The folded paper, the origami, this little square, you would stick your fingers in it and it would have numbers on it. And I don't know what they were called, but I mean, that went back as far as, 8, 9 years old. And you would pick a number, and then you would rotate the paper that many times, and then you would pick a color, and then you would just keep opening them, and then it would give you like your fortune or whatever the message was. I mean, we used to make them as kids all the time.
So when you were like me, like a little boy, and you're in class, and a girl that you liked, she'd come over and she'd want to do the whole thing like what you were just talking about. And of course, the little boy like me would think, oh, she likes me. And now she just wants me to do that damn paper thing.
Well, the other thing that we used to do was, and you actually brought this one up, was your apple stems.
Yes, you turn the apple stem, and it's
A, B, C, D, and then that would give you the name of the person that you were going to spend. It was the first initial of the person you were going to spend the rest of your life with, or
hopefully not your mother.
God's sake, Mom, I'm 26 years old!
Excuse me, Mr. Grown-Up! What do you want for breakfast?
Chocolate milk and Eggos, please!
Did we mention Wishing Upon a Star? I don't know if I mentioned that one.
I don't think so.
No. So, there was that. I also have a wishing jar. So you take a piece of paper and you write your intention and you put it in the wishing jar and wait for your wish to come true. What movie was Zoltar in? I'm going to say maybe Big with Tom Hanks.
Maybe.
Actually, I actually have, again, another visual. I actually have a mini Zoltar. I bought it in Salem. And
Oh, yeah.
Zoltar speaks.
Yes, and he was also on a commercial, some kind of a life insurance commercial or something, which you will hear right now.
Great riches will find you when Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance. So you only pay for what you need.
Wow, thanks, Zoltar. How can I ever repay you?
Maybe you could free Zoltar? Thanks, lady. Taxi! Only pay for what you need.
And we're back.
Another form of divination, too, that I hadn't covered is a psychomantium. Now, I don't have the room in my house to build a proper psychomantium. I've actually seen them in some shows. I do believe it's on the History Channel or Discovery, and it's a room that is completely black. And do believe maybe not soundproofed. I'm not really sure, but you would just sit in a chair in this black room and images would come, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was a show we were watching, and it was about Nostradamus and different people who, had foretold of events in the future, and I can't remember who it was, but they had used a psychomantium to do that. So I think that is kind of my list of different types of divination. So let's just talk about the 70s and divination a little bit. Our stores carried several forms of divination, as we discussed, the little horoscopes, Ouija boards, the fortune fish, the mood rings. And the other thing that I wanted to bring forward too, and this is just a throwback memory, is comic books. I think I used to buy a lot of the Archie digests and Archie comic books when I was a kid. And of course, in the back of the comic books, there was like these ads for, your X-ray vision and your sea monkeys. And there was always, I'll have to see if I can actually find the advertisement. And it was a book about witchcraft. And I do believe it was Gavin and Yvonne McLeod. I may have to correct that. And I always begged my mother. I wanted that book so bad, so bad. And I was never allowed to order it. And the funny thing is, and I do believe we discussed this in a past episode, I had bought this insane amount of books from Marketplace on Facebook, and that book was actually in that box of books, and I was so excited because it was just like it had come full circle. So it's like, oh, I finally got this book, and I couldn't even make it through the first chapter. I was just like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't have this as a 12-year-old.
Yet at 12, you probably would have thought, oh, this is awesome.
Well, I may have, but it was just kind of funny. Unfortunately, Hollywood portrayed divination in a poor light. Seances ended up with someone being possessed, and Ouija boards conjured up demons, and horror really became the genre of the time. So a lot of aspects of the occult and divination and witchcraft were painted in such a poor light, and sadly, a huge bulk of the population believed that portrayal and took that to be as it was. And of course, as we get older, and now we know that with all of this coming to more of a light, that's just not how it is.
And it's just like Schoolhouse Rock says, knowledge is power.
Yes, yeah.
But you didn't have cable, so.
No, I didn't.
As your body grows big, your mind must flower. It's great to learn, 'cause knowledge is power. It's Schoolhouse Rockin', but you're on the mouth of your favorite Schoolhouse Rock.
And one thing that I did have as a kid in the 70s, and this is a sad, sad story for me, just because I no longer have it. I don't even know where I found it. It was called The Complete Book of Fortune. And I'll never forget it because it was this white hardcover book, and it was embossed in blue foil. And I'll never forget that. And it was the best book I ever had on fortune telling. It encompassed pretty much everything I just discussed here, like every type of divination that there was. And of course, at the age of 11, 12, 13, however old I was, it was just too overwhelming. And I just didn't have the patience to learn like I do now. And if anybody ever sees that book in a secondhand bookstore, drop me a line, because I would love to get a copy of it again, just for learning, as a learning tool, as well as just as a keepsake. But again, I think, oh God, I hate to say this, but I think I sold it in a yard sale for 25 cents. And I know who bought it, and I know who has it. Well, she did have it. I don't know if she still has it or if she got rid of it. So maybe what I'll do is I will maybe reach out. And the other thing too, at the age of 13, I also discovered boys. So fortune telling kind of took a backseat. So
maybe that girl's listening right now, and maybe she'll give you your book back.
well, I know how to get hold of her, so I think I will reach out and just say, I'll double it. I'll give you 50 cents this time.
You didn't steal her boyfriend or anything, did you?
No, I did not
Okay,
steal.
well then
No,
she
I
might
didn't.
give you her book
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. So, so anyways, that was a pretty not completely in-depth look at different aspects. If you're interested in any of those, like I said, there's lots of information out there in the internet lands, and lots of books. I'm old school, so I like to learn from books. I like to make notes. I like to make lists.
Plus, there might be something that we didn't cover, and if there is, they can contact you by
reaching out to the Maritime Witch at gmail.com. Yeah, we'd love to discover other aspects if there's something else that you would like us to cover in divination or any other topic, actually. So having said that, I think we will now move on to the botanical of the week.
And the time has come for plants to take back the world so rightfully ours.
So the botanical that I have chosen for this podcast is mugwort. It is associated with the moon and the planets Venus and Earth. It is known as the dreaming herb and is associated with lucid dreaming and astral protection. It is also used for purification and divination work. And as a tea, it aids with digestion and arthritis.
Doesn't like mugwort, isn't that like a Harry Potter thing?
That's a muggle.
Okay, so mugwort's not Harry Potter.
Nope.
Okay.
It's a botanical.
Okay, cool.
Okay. And so ends the botanical section of the podcast. And now we will move on to the gemstone portion of the podcast.
I want to rock.
The gemstone that I have chosen for today is one of my favorites. It is a moonstone known as the Traveler's Stone. It is a sodium, potassium, aluminum silicate. Wrap your tongue around that. It is used for healing and calming. It is associated, obviously, moonstone, with the moon, and Cancer, Libra, and Scorpio. Its element is water, and it is also associated with femininity, intuition, balance, and protection. And so ends the gemstone portion of the podcast. And now we will do the shout out section of the podcast.
That's my shout out.
Shout out. Yay. So, what do we have for shout outs for this one? Nothing that I have been sent as of yet, but I will, and I know I'll advertise this again coming up in the future. The fair that I had advertised for the, July 22nd that got canceled because of our big storm has been rescheduled for September 2nd, and I will just continue to advertise that until September 2nd. So for anybody who is planning on coming out and seeing us on July 22nd, September 2nd is your day.
Awesome.
So, and unless we get any more shout outs, then that is it so far.
That stuff's good to know because you don't want to be sitting in the parking lot going, I thought this was supposed to be today.
Well,
Nope.
we were all disappointed that it got canceled, but for obvious safety reasons and the fact that roads were missing, it was kind of hard for people to get around. So, but we're in the process of all being fixed up and
Yeah, the helicopter was in the shop
yeah.
getting fixed.
Yeah.
So
We don't have a hovercraft. So, all right. So ends the shout outs for now. Okay, so I haven't decided on the topic for episode 9 yet, so it'll be a surprise. So in the meantime, may the universe find you safe, happy, and healthy.